Welcome to Mentoring Unlocked, hosted by Lindley, founder of Serendip's Leadership and Mentor Key, the platform making mentoring impactful and elevating workplace development conversations. Maud is a renowned executive coach and leadership strategist with over 2 decades of experience, helping leaders unlock their full potential through adaptive leadership and meaningful mentoring. Tune in for personal mentoring stories, expert insights, practical tools, and bold conversations. Whether you're a mentor, mentee, or a culture shaper, there's something for you.
Mersina Mouhtaris, welcome. Thank you so much for being our guest today on Mentoring Unlocked. I'm so excited. We had to, like 2 minutes ago, we were chatting so much, we had to stop.
We did.
Let's start the podcast and go straight into it. And we were just reminiscing. We met 10, 11 years ago.
At least.
And you have been over the years such a strong supporter of our public mentoring program, the Women in Banking and Finance Mentoring Program. Yeah. Always there, always responding to the calls of being a mentor, doing like a fantastic job, having such a wonderful impact on emerging leaders across the banking and finance sector in Australia. Thank you for coming today to the podcast and sharing a bit of yourself, really, your stories.
Thank you, Maud. I'm so pleased to be here. As I said before, I was first time podcasting, so a little nervous and thinking initially, what on earth am I going to talk about? What I've got to offer? But,
so much to talk about.
Absolutely. But it was just, it was just a moment and I'm so thrilled. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to having the conversation.
You're the head of compliance for debt capital markets or for capital markets in general at RBC. I want to hear, because you've worked for several organizations, always in sort of the broader investment banking arena. I'd love to hear your take on your career, your long career. I mean, it's almost 30 years of...
I try not to think about that, but yeah, it makes me sound so much older. But yeah,
it makes you sound mature.
Absolutely.
And very, very knowledgeable.
Absolutely. That's the way to put it.
Especially in your field of compliance, you would have seen everything.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us what has been the golden thread throughout the years.
Look, it's an interesting, I think back on my career and it astounds me a little bit, actually. I'd like to tell you that I was someone that was purposeful and had made every clear decision on, a trajectory that I don't always envisage, but that just never happened. I fell into it a little bit. I was always someone who had a legal background and wanted very much to go into criminal law.
Criminal law?
Yeah. I really wanted to be an advocate, a defending advocate, and really saw myself in that space. And very early on in my studies, I had the opportunity to do some experience, some work experience with some friends, actually. And I did that with one of the Aboriginal legal services out in the west of New South Wales. So I had direct exposure in places like Burke and Dubbo and Broken Hill. And again, I was just an observer. And I think what that showed me was, wow, this is really intense. And it was amazing and it was a great experience. But it also made me realize how invested you needed to be and actually how difficult, if you're a person of empathy and emotion, how difficult it is to dissect yourself away from what you're seeing. And so that was really tough. So as a result, I decided actually, I'm not sure I could do this every day. I'd always had the mantra that you need to love what you do because you're doing it for a long time, right?
Of course.
And so that actually was the precipice to move me in a different direction. And I was studying part-time. I was working. I needed some funds and I decided to find a job. And frankly, it just came up in banking. So it was a bit of luck, a bit fortuitous. And so it was really a bit of a drive to do something that perhaps I might like over time and find a love for something, but still sort of err on the side of the law and the advocacy side. So when I ended up in banking, I was studying part-time doing law, and the idea was to move into a paralegal role. And eventually I had some really good advice by a boss at the time who said, why don't you think about compliance? And this was years ago. I really had to pause. And I said, I have no idea what compliance is. What is that? And at the time, in fairness, I don't think many people knew what it was. And it really was a growing discipline, and it probably hadn't been defined by that at that stage. I found myself with an opportunity, and next thing you know, I was in compliance, and I've never really looked back. And what I loved about it was it gave me the opportunity to use my sort of legal background and my legal skill, but also be an advocate in many ways. What was different about perhaps being a lawyer with a documentation focus, compliance was more a people focus.
Yes. Okay.
So, you had to build relationships. And so for me, that's been the golden thread. In everything that I've done, my every day is always different, but the common thread is having to build relationships and trust and intimacy in a work environment where you're able to influence without necessarily the authority. And that's sort of been a key for me. Yeah.
Amazing. And so actually, someone who represents compliance within an organization, what is your main objective? Is it to protect the organization, to protect the general public, to protect the people that you care for without them necessarily wanting you to protect them that much because they want to do a deal? How do you see your golden star, your I guess the compass that drives your decisions?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's just so entrenched you don't actually think about it. But there is a bit of a protection approach there. The North Star is actually protecting not just the firm that you represent, and it is a major focus because clearly we're there to protect and enshrine the business being able to do what it does. But it's actually to also protect the people.
Yes.
It really is. And it's not because you necessarily have a particular relationship with certain people. It's actually all of the people. It's to protect them from themselves, from regulators, from clients, from internal conflict.
Yes.
It's really, you are really, I describe my role often as the moral compass of an organisation.
Okay.
So you really have to lean into value set, not just of yourself, but of the organisation, because we all bring different value sets, but understanding how that meshes with the organisation and how you deliver for the organisation. Yeah. But ultimately that translates to the people.
Yeah, you protect them against themselves in some ways.
Yeah, protect them against the environments for which they work. It's my job to offer them the advice and make sure they've got the right guidance. And that's tricky because they don't always see it that way. Often you can be seen as a veto to business or a inhibitor to business. So that's part of the tension in my day-to-day role.
Yes, but I'm sure you manage that tension so well because of the relationships that you build with people. If they end up trusting you and trusting your intent, then they let you do the best job that you can.
Yeah, I think that's right. And some come naturally and some are just hard work consistently. Yeah. And that's part of the fun.
Yes. Tell me about this person who said that they saw you as a compliance person. Were they a mentor? Are you still in touch? Who's helped you throughout your career?
Yeah, that's funny actually. They weren't a mentor and we're not still in touch. And I think they probably just had a moment of influence. But I've been fortunate enough to have so many amazing official and non-official mentors and champions actually throughout my career. I often reflect on it and think, wow, was I just lucky? Or, was there something about me that attracted them and vice versa? You just never really know. But notwithstanding, I don't think I really question it. And I just think I'm fortunate to have had them cross my paths. Some in continuous, and they've been relationships that have had longevity, and others are just fleeting moments. Yeah. But certainly some of the key people that have been super influential, I was very fortunate to have just peer relationships. And one of those peer relationships was someone who ended up becoming my direct manager and boss at the time. And she just saw something in me that I didn't see myself, and a strong belief in what I could bring to both an organisation, to my own career. And she has been instrumental in shaping me.
Amazing.
And, some of the things that she offered me was my innate ability to want to be a perfectionist. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget when she said to me, Mersina, it doesn't always have to be the Rolls-Royce standard. You know, there is a pendulum and you need to check yourself as to what standard you're offering.
Yes.
And, you know, when you move from being a sole deliverer to a leader, I'll never forget when she said to me, if people are delivering at 50% of what you deliver, Mersina, they're often delivering at a really good standard. You need to be able to, you know, you need to be able to understand that. And just some perspective on not everybody is in a role that they love. Not everybody is offering, you know, 110%. And that's okay, you know, and understanding what people's motivations are and how do you get the best out of them and what works for them personally often drives some of the best, you know, outcomes. And she was instrumental in helping me understand that. But look, along the way, I've had so much more than that. Like, you know, Maud, we were talking about a conversation where, you know, I first met you and I remember describing the situation that I was in as, you know, being on a ledge or off a cliff and hanging on with my fingernails for dear life, right? And that was one of my first coaching experiences and you helped me through that. And that's, you know, being in an environment where you're starting your journey and your leadership journey where you've got children and ambition and you want so much and you're trying to juggle so many balls, you get to a point where you're like, I've got no more capacity for this. How do I manage this? And how do I continue to grow and continue to offer others opportunities to grow, but still have a little bit for myself, right? And that's all part of the journey.
I love the fact that you say that you've had so many mentors, informal, formal, perhaps some people who don't even know that they've been mentors to you. And to me, that's the sign of someone who is able to recognize the influence that those people have had. I mean, it's, you know, the definition of serendipity, which is recognizing on your path, the insights, the shifts, that you need to embrace because of those influences of various people or various events who, actually have an impact on you, and letting those, people or those events, help you progress towards your goals. So tell me about this mentor who helped you, I guess, reframe what you saw as perfect versus, you know, 50%, changing the ruler essentially. What did she do that you think was absolutely instrumental in you shifting your mindset?
You know, it wasn't anything groundbreaking. When I think back about it, it didn't need to be any sort of exaggerant way. It was more around just tweaking the edges. That's what she did. And more so than that, she gave me her time. It wasn't a lot of time, but she insisted that we meet whenever she was free. And she delved into the chaotic mind that was Mersina back then and probably still exists today a little, you know, but the ability just to bring that down a notch and just to have some perspective, and rather than think your to-do list or your tasks are so imperative that you're driving through a checklist, it's actually like, take a step back. Let's do the veranda moment. What do we really need to do? And do you really need to do that? Yeah. And let's think about, where in the organisation can that get done? And actually, where can you just leave that? Because the universe will just sort it out over time. Someone will step into that. Actually, it's not super urgent. It doesn't need your trademark on it consistently. And so it was just those moments where we tweaked that thinking and that mindset that probably had the most significant impact for me.
To be able to tweak that mindset, she needed to understand the mindset that led you to that need to tick everything off and perhaps to do everything perfectly. She needed to understand that mindset to help you reframe it, sounds to me.
Yeah, and perhaps because of the trust that she established with me, I was really authentic with her, and I think I gave her full access to, you know, how I was thinking. There's a level of vulnerability that comes with that I'll be honest, does not come natural to me. And I've really had to work on that over the years. And actually sitting here with you, Maud, a light bulb has just gone on to say, actually, she probably was the first person that helped me see how being vulnerable is a really essential role in leadership. And even today, I have to remind myself, I need to be really vulnerable with my team. It's okay to show people, actually, I don't have this. I do not have all the answers. I'm completely sinking. So guess what? I need to reframe. And showing your team or those around you that you're experiencing the same things at any level, I actually think is really powerful.
So that's fascinating. Let's go to this point. I love this idea that she established a level of trust that allowed you to really be vulnerable with your mindset, with your thinking, to really be able to put this on the table. And it did two things. It helped you reframe some of the unhelpful mindsets that you were carrying, but it also showed you how vulnerability is important. What do you think was preventing that vulnerability, that openness, to be natural for you at the time?
Oh, so many things. I should probably first by saying, just because you have that experience and you start there, it doesn't mean it came natural. It took years to really get to that. And there were so many other experiences that probably helped shape that. Okay. But that was probably the start of it. What would have prevented me exploring that vulnerability a little bit more, I think, is the question. I'm in investment banking. It's a pretty tough gig. And I'm a woman in investment banking. Yes. I'm one of many, and I'm thrilled to see so many more women in the space. But certainly 30 years ago, there wasn't that many of us, and not at a senior level. You come into it thinking you have to behave a certain way.
Of course.
You have to be a certain person. You have to be the alpha, because the alpha male is what's driving the success in those environments. You're not competing, but you're engaging in that environment. And it shapes you.
Of course.
I think to say that it doesn't shape us would probably be disingenuous.
Of course.
As it shapes you, it starts to become natural, and it's just embedded subconsciously over time, I think. So even though I had that experience and had to be vulnerable, I did that because there was trust and intimacy in the working relationship, right? I don't think that came naturally to me even off the back of that. I really had to, I went through so many different experiences before I realized actually people respond better when I'm vulnerable.
When I'm myself.
Yeah. I'd like to think that I've been myself for a long time. I like to bring authenticity and be natural. But in being that, you still are shaped by a really harsh environment. And it's a pretty hard environment.
Yes.
Sometimes I've described it as combative, and people are really aghast by that. Or I say it's soul destroying. And even more, the response that I get to that is, oh, Mersina, we should get out of this environment. And it's not that it is. It's just that, you have really hard days.
Yes.
And you've got to fortify against those hard days, and you've got to have a lot of confidence and back yourself. And sometimes that's just on the exterior. It's not always a strong belief.
Yes.
So, it's a bit of a journey. It's a bit of a journey, right?
I understand. I did 10 years in banking before I transitioned into executive coaching. And I used to tell my friends, those who were not in banking, that it was a bit like going to war, or to battle rather, every day.
It's a bit sad to hear that, isn't it, Maud, right?
But I love I love the way you're putting it. It is combative. At the end of the day, it's a very intense environment where you have to, I was going to say fight, and I don't want to use the term fight, but in a way you do have to battle for outcomes, whether you're battling against the competition or sometimes you have internal necessary conflicts and tensions that precisely protect the bank, because you have two different perspectives within. That help protect the bank. But yes, there is in banking this nature of highly competitive, that environment that can turn into a combative environment. And so it does bring out of you that strong resilience and assertiveness and a determination that can sometimes negate what otherwise would seem as quite authentic, vulnerable, open.
Completely. And that was part of probably the second learning that I took on, that was a really strong learning for me, is notwithstanding having the ability to be so strong and resilient and confident and, bring that to the table in a work environment. Actually, you need to know when to taper that down. And I've had some real success in managing and mentoring, but I've also had some really big failures. And they were probably the biggest lessons and the biggest things that I look back on and think, I'm so glad that happened to me now. At the time, I was, gutted, but I'm so glad that happened to me now. I saw them as a failure. In fact, they weren't a failure. They were part of the learning.
And did you learn? Can you share some of those stories?
Look, I started at an organisation where I was brought on to really lift the standing and the stature of the compliance discipline in an organisation. And for me, that meant being harsh and strong and delivering and all those things that you do in a banking environment, right?
Yes.
That have worked for me up until a point in time. But actually, in that environment, didn't work at all.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up losing the confidence of my team. And it didn't work successfully. So for me, the biggest learning out of that was, well, what you needed to do was be more authentic and actually taper down that harshness and work with the individuals and show the vulnerability and show actually how hard the environment was on you rather than hide it and come to work every day with the armor on.
Wow. Okay.
And I take that with me every day.
And so today, I guess it feels to me like there's been this battle between the person that was successful in outcomes and the person who is within, very authentic, ready to be very self-aware and open. And it feels to me like you almost have turned the volume up on one person and down on the other. And now I would say you've probably managed to bring a balance of the two. Because are these two sides of you antinomic? Are they in conflict? Can they coexist?
Yeah, great question. I think they can coexist. I don't think you've got equilibrium at any point in time. I think you need to ratchet one up and ratchet one down often. What I've learned is, some of your biggest strengths can also be your biggest weaknesses.
Yeah, of course.
And funny enough, everybody's done a strengths finder. I think I've used the Clifton Strengths Finder over time. There's HBDI.
Yes.
But I've got one that I love and I carry it around in my notebook with me. And every now and then I pull it out and I go, that's why I reacted like that in that meeting or in that scenario, because actually, whilst that's my strength in this scenario, that doesn't really work for me. So it's a constant reminder. There's never equilibrium. You dial up and you dial down. You don't always get it right. And I think accepting that and being able to recognize it and pivot and say, hey, I didn't get that right. Can I reframe this?
Yes.
Can we start again?
Do you say that to people?
All the time.
Oh, amazing. Amazing.
All the time. Yeah. I'm not sure that people would recognize that because it probably is to different people at different levels, right? It's not a concentration, thankfully, because if I'm saying sorry consistently, I think I've got a problem. But yeah, absolutely. I'm finding that I'm really often self-checking, self-reflecting and saying, can we revisit that? That didn't go as well as what I would have liked. It doesn't mean it's something that's the majority of what I do, of course, but it does mean that it's part and parcel of, being a leader.
Yes. And I'm sure that's what builds trust, your ability to, I was going to say question your approach, but it's not really question. It's actually be aware of your approach consistently and having the humility to go back and say, actually, it didn't go the way that I wanted. I mean, that I don't know anything that brings more trust between two individuals than being able to say, this was what I was intending. And this is not exactly the path that we took. And I take responsibility for this and let's do it again. I mean, that's the most powerful thing that you can do.
It's super powerful. And in fact, one of the relationships I have in my current role today is as a result of that. And it's probably one of the strongest relationships I have. And that individual is probably one of my biggest champions today.
Amazing. Yeah. That reminds me of a concept that's below the line and above the line. I don't know if you've heard this concept. Yeah. Do you apply it? Do you?
I probably do subconsciously without realizing it. It's not like it's not a conscious thought consistently. But yeah.
Lucy, now tell me about how you're drawing from that personal experience when you're a mentor. How do you help others? Do you help mentees travel the same journey as you have? I mean, everyone is unique and different, so they would have different different strengths that play out negatively for them. How do you put that into practice as a mentor?
It was super important for me very early on to give back the way that I had received. Some of the mentors and champions and, fleeting advice that I got across along the way was so important to me that I could see that there was value in giving that back to others and helping others come along their own journey. So it has been something that I've been involved in for some time. I find that the biggest thing that you can do is not just be part of structured mentoring programs, which, as you know, I've been a part of the Bluebirth mentoring program and even internally at organisations that I've worked with. In fact, I was part of one where we established one for compliance professionals within the current RBC environment. I actually think even sometimes more impactful to some degree, is recognizing where individuals who lean in need a mentor unofficially and offering the opportunity for them to be, to have some proximity. And I do it often. I probably do it more often than what I realize. And not only that, surprisingly, people that I have connection with ask me to be unofficial mentors to other juniors, which I'm always really touched by, because I'm like, for sure they don't want to speak to me. But yeah, so even, me in my current role has that moment of, doubting yourself. But I'm like, yes, of course. And I only had one the other week, and I went, absolutely. So whilst it can sometimes be time consuming, it's something that I always make time for, because it gives you an opportunity just to understand what someone else is experiencing and share some of your advice, experience, and give them an opportunity to reflect and have some perspective.
Yes.
That might be helpful for them on their journey. And that's really something that I can't tell you how much you get out of that as an individual, just to see somebody else flourish.
Yes.
And succeed in their own way.
Yes. Yes. It's so addictive, isn't it?
It really is. And it's probably the thing that I get most joy out of in my job.
Yes. Yes. Tell me about the space that you create for them to be reflective and to have that perspective. You just said what you help really is for them to reflect and take that perspective, just like the mentors in your own life have done for you. For the mentors who are listening, or aspiring mentors who are listening to us today, how do you structure, or what do you tell yourself when you are in a mentoring conversation with someone else?
Yeah, it's probably different for different circumstances. I find in a structured mentoring program, so in particular the WIBIF program that's supported by Surrenders, I think that's fantastic. The mentor keys. When I'm thinking about or preparing for a session with my mentee, I'm thinking about what's the framework asking of me here? Where should we take this? Where are the little tidbits or the advice or the 10-second or the 10-minute snapshot I need to read just to help me move this discussion and this mentee forward?
Yes.
So in that sense, I tend to be a little bit structured, and it's not always structured. It will just depend on where the conversation goes, and often you're off-piste, and that's more valuable for them because they're experiencing something different. So in that sense, I tend to be structured and take from the material available. Where there's unofficial mentoring, I think you said it before, Maud, I really focus on creating a safe space. And in doing that, I listen. And I question. I just question.
Yeah.
They'll often give you things away, and I'll write that down and I'll say, here's what I'm hearing. Can I ask you more about X? Yeah. And before you know it, it's almost like pulling on a thread, and it just unravels.
Yes. And
it's so amazing to hear from the individual and just to get their perspective. And in particular, I spend a lot of time, I've probably spent more time with women. Mind you, it's a bit balanced today. And just hearing some of the challenges from a confidence perspective, some of the stereotypes that, they don't ask, they're afraid to make themselves out different, they want to portray, they don't have the confidence in their own abilities. There are so many stereotypes there, and just understanding them and exploring them. And some of these women are amazing.
How do you help them question those beliefs that they carry with them that inherently hinder their potential and their effectiveness? How do you help someone identify what is hindering them, what the belief that they need to shift and reframe?
Yeah, often the individuals that I'm dealing with, I've had some level of experience or exposure to in a work environment. And so I've seen examples.
Yes.
And I, through engagement and questioning, get them to draw out some work environment examples.
Yes.
And it's almost self-revealing to them. They're like, oh, actually, I'm really doing that, aren't I? I'm like, yeah. So it's almost like a reflection. I use reflection and holding up the mirror a little bit, but I do it in a way where it's them self-realizing. It's not me saying, here's what I'm seeing. Because when somebody tells you this is what I'm seeing, you're like, well, that's great. That's what you're saying. But I don't believe that for a second, right?
Yeah.
So, I use examples to hold up a bit of a mirror. So where you have self-reflection, I find that a really powerful tool.
I love this because what you're telling us is that you can see what's holding the person back or what they're doing that actually is not leading to the right outcome for them. But you refrain from telling them. Which is very tempting, right? To actually give feedback. So tempting to tell the person.
Yeah, my mind's screaming. It's like, no, that's not you.
I understand this. Yeah. But you refrain from it because you know it will have a better outcome to actually draw them to that personal reflection.
Yeah.
Do you think it's what was powerful in the mentors who helped you reframe some of those self-inflicted beliefs that were unhelpful for you as well?
I've never thought about it that way. But yes. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably without me even realizing it, probably.
Yes. So that's interesting because your mentees don't probably realize that you know what they should think about, but you don't tell them.
Of course, yeah. So I probably not thought about it that way.
Yeah. So we talk about the fact that you can see a pattern in someone, you can see what's holding them back, you know what they need to reframe in their mind. So you ask them a lot of questions, you sort of tell them what you're hearing from them to help them come to that insight. This is pure, beautiful mentoring. Now let's move to the next part, which often feels easier, but it's not that easy. When the person has that insight, oh yes, I come across as too intense, or I came across as, on the contrary, perhaps too self-effaced. So let's imagine the person has that realization. How do you then help them reframe their mental habit that's obviously quite unhelpful for them? Do you have a story where you have helped someone shift an unhelpful mindset?
I actually think it happens in almost every mentoring arrangement that I undertake. There's always a self-realization moment at some point. Sometimes it's more often
because you're a
than
very
not.
powerful mentor.
Perhaps. No, I think really it's just a process. It's a process. And if you give people the time and the space and you ask the right questions, you just need to listen.
Yeah.
And that's been a skill that I've had to develop over time. You just need to listen. I think there is always a self-realization moment. You're right. The next phase is, well, what do you do with that? Because it's like, great, like the light bulb goes on and all of a sudden they're like, oh, of course.
That's what I do.
Actually, last time we spoke, I went to this meeting and I realized what I was doing, and they bring that as an example. I think it's then shifting the dynamic and the thought process to say, right, well, what are you going to do about that? And what do you think in that circumstance would have really served you well? And the one thing that I do tend to do, and we draw on at the very beginning of a mentoring arrangement and then often throughout, is I really try to understand my mentees by understanding their value set.
Yes.
And then from their values, we move into their strengths and challenges. And those things coupled together really give me a very good insight into an individual.
Wow.
Yeah. And so for me, I know what my values are, but they're so very different from everybody else, right? And often they can shift a little, but they don't really shift a lot, right? And so what I do is I draw into their values and go, remember when we spoke about X, Y, and Z? Let's just draw on that. And perhaps that's going to help you understand how you might want to move that forward.
Wow.
And that's been really powerful.
Super mentoring, Mersina, to be able to do that. It's super mentoring.
Yeah, well, and I get a really good response. There's not always an immediate solution, which I really love actually, because what it means is people are thinking about it, they're reflecting.
Yes.
They know there's something to be done, but they really want to take some time and go in a direction that's going to be meaningful.
Yes. Yep. And I think that's what I'm hearing from you here is because everyone is so unique with a very different set of core values. That's listening to this really helps you understand what's holding them back. But you cannot possibly have the solution as to how they need to reframe that, because they still need to be close to their own personal values. So it's up to them to actually reflect on how they want to shape this slightly differently, either in behaviors or in thinking, that is still actually in integrity with their own values.
Yeah, spot on. Actually, it's probably something we haven't talked about at all, and it's really important, is being authentic. And I know we talk a lot about being authentic, in today's environment, but we could have talked a bit about this 30 years ago. I think it's so important. You need to stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that because, I had to bring a certain persona, but I, in some ways, always did stay true to myself.
Yes.
You need to be comfortable. And so whatever those actions and whatever those solutions and however you may bring yourself to your job, to your life, to your family, to your children, you need to be really authentic.
Yes.
And you need to be comfortable.
So what I'm hearing from you, particularly from your experience, is that those two sides of, and you said that earlier in our conversation, it's not that you were either the sort of thoughtful, vulnerable person or the combative, assertive.
The alpha female, right? Yeah.
Is that you're a bit of both. You're a mix of those two sides of you. So it's not about creating a new persona or being someone you're not. It's about finding in yourself the vulnerability to find those different sides of your personality.
Yeah, bring them all to the table.
And bring them all to the table.
Like, I think, one of the questions you asked me, Maud, was, what's important for, future leadership?
Yes.
For me, authenticity is absolutely imperative.
Yeah.
The leaders of the past are not what we see today. Like, if you think about a leader 30 years ago, it's not what's sitting at the helm today.
No,
it's so very different. We've had so many world events and so many changes, and we're still on the precipice of leadership change.
Let's go there, actually. This is a perfect way for us to finish on this super insightful podcast. Tell me about I guess, how you draw that mentoring experience into your leadership, and why is mentoring so important in the world of leadership today, more than 30 years ago?
For me, mentoring is a way to connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't connect with everybody, but it's understanding, the people that are in an organisation, what they bring, how they bring. And so without it, I think you really lose a super important piece of what an organisation can offer, because an organisation's only as good as its people. So for me, I think when we think about leadership, whether it's a formal structure or whether you're just taking the time to connect with people, I think any leader's going to struggle if they don't have that piece in their armour or in their toolkit. It's sort of my thought process. Yeah, and having the ability to, as a leader, understand you're not the smartest in the room. You don't have the best ideas. And actually, that's not what's being asked of you. What's being asked of you is to understand what you need in your organisation, who the people are in your organisation, how they bring it, and lead them. Give them the pathway to do that.
It's creating the ecosystem that helps them collectively succeed. Yeah. It's no longer about your expertise.
It's not about me. It's not about the leader. It's not about you. It's actually about creating the pathway. And I'll be really honest, it's not something that I've mastered, but it's something that I hope to continue to improve and inspire the people that either work with me or around me or for me to be able to do. Yeah.
I'm going to finish with one of the rapid fire questions, Mersina. Okay. What is the skill, the unique skill that only mentoring can teach leaders?
Listen. Just listen.
Yeah. I hear this so often, but you've actually illustrated this so perfectly today. It was a masterclass in mentoring. Thank you so much, Mersina. That was so insightful, the way that you've weaved in this very interesting conundrum of what do you bring to the workplace, particularly in a very intense environment. You told us what vulnerability actually really looks like, and you shared with us your recipe for mentoring. I love this aspect of listen to the values and really help the person realize the impact they have, even if you know it, without telling them, and really, really listen, which makes better leaders today in this complex world.
It does. Thank you, Maud. I'm really touched that you've had me here and I'm so happy to share it. But yeah, thank you very much.
I think
really
there's
humbled.
So much more that we can talk about. I hope you come back.
I will.
Mersina Mouhtaris, thank you so much for today.
Thanks, Maud. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Mentoring Unlocked. This podcast is powered by MentorKey, the platform designed to make mentoring impactful. If this episode unlocked inspiration within you, please follow, share, or leave us a review.